Yay, veterans for peace! Yay, veterans for peace! Hi, peace guys! Yay, veterans for peace! Courageous veterans for peace.
Okay. Today we come together again to commemorate Veterans Day. A day many call Armistice Day or Remembrance Day, marked often on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the moment when the armistice was signed in Compiègne, France, ending World War I between the Allies and Germany. Next year, the first Armistice Day was held at Buckingham Palace by King George V in 1919. For that day in 1919, a cenotaph was designed by the famous English architect Edwin Lutyens and constructed in wood and plaster at Whitehall in London. Later it was rebuilt in Portland stone between 1919 and 1920 at the same location where it still stands today, 35 feet high, weighing 120 tons. Cenotaph derives from the Greek word kainos, meaning empty, and taphos, meaning tomb. Cenotaphs can take many forms, honoring individuals or dedicated to groups of individuals whose heroic presence in our lives bear remembering. And Armistice Day has its flower, the blood-red poppy, which Dr. John McCrae observed growing and blooming in the trenches and immortalized in his poem, Flanders Field. His outpouring of grief about the war and the loss of his best friend. And Armistice Day has 1 or 2 minutes of silence, where everyday life ceases completely in what the Times of London described once as a great, awful silence. A silence that I would guess was one of pain and suffering. How could the waste of war be seen otherwise? Prior to the first Armistice Day, late in 1919, some British servicemen refused to take part in the exultant military parades. As a result, the first Remembrance Day ceremonies were commemorative rather than triumphant, to which on that day the Manchester Guardian announced, "Today is a day of peace." For some, Armistice Day was a day to be honored annually by gratitude and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and the mutual understanding between nations. And to many, it is a day of mourning. As Lao Tzu says so eloquently in chapter 31 of the Tao Te Ching, when many people are being killed, they should be mourned in heartfelt sorrow. That is why victory must be observed like a funeral. For there is no lasting victories in war, only their perpetuation as the wheel of time and suffering continues to turn unabated.
But in that homily, Charlie quoted from some of the biography of Alden Poole, and I think we all benefited to hear of that. He says, "I enlisted in the Army 2 weeks after high school graduation. I had heard or read almost nothing about conscientious objection, pacifism, or the application of Christian principles to the issue of military service." And God help us, that's the truth today. The incredible failure of the churches. And you know, we've had a pedophilia scandal in Boston and in the Catholic Church, but this is the pedophilia scandal. Sending 19-year-old kids off to kill. And a church that's silent. I went into combat on my 19th birthday. And soon after, I went up to my first dead German soldier. There was an ugly, dark hole in his forehead. On his belt buckle was engraved, as all with Wehrmacht soldiers, the words, "Gott mit uns," God is with us. God bless America. Isn't that lie engraved in the petrified soul of America? Doesn't that have to be exorcised? It was a shock to learn that German soldiers were Christian believers. In his pockets were a rosary, a Catholic pocket missal, and pictures of his wife and his children. The realization swept over me, as it must have soldiers throughout history, that war is insane. And I had nothing against this man, and he had nothing against me. And we were pawns in a game not of our making, a game played by politicians.